This is HOA mess. The HOA made it personal, and I made it documented. I work as a property appraiser in Duluth, Minnesota, which means I know exactly what a bogus lien does to home value, and the woman screaming at me in the Cypress Point Community Association parking lot is about to put one on my house if I do not shut her down right now. Heather Sanchez slams a service invoice packet onto the hood of my truck, rain already soaking the edges, and she jabs her finger at a line item I cannot even read from this angle. You owe $375 for unauthorized commercial vehicle parking, and you have 72 hours to pay, or we tow, she says. And her voice has that sing-song fake calm edge that makes my jaw clench. I pull my phone out and hold it up so she knows I am recording. That truck has been parked in my driveway for 2 weeks, Heather, I say. It is not commercial, it is a personal pickup, and I already sent you proof of registration. She puts on her thin reading glasses, the ones she uses when she wants to look official, and she smiles like she is talking to a child. You can be mad, or you can be compliant, she says, and she taps the invoice again. I feel the rain getting heavier, soaking through my gray work shirt, but I do not move. Heather is the Community Standards Chair, which in Cypress Point means she invents guidelines on the fly and enforces them selectively, and right now she is holding a complaint that sounds like a copy-paste from an older case. The exact same wording I saw 3 years ago when another homeowner got hit with the same tow threat and ended up selling his house just to escape the fees. That case never made sense. The guy had no commercial vehicle, no violation, but the HOA fined him into oblivion anyway, and when I asked questions at the time, the records magically disappeared. Now she is running the same play on me, and I know why. I pushed back last month when she tried to fine me for a mailbox color that was never in the rulebook, and she does not forget. I stay polite, because polite makes bullies careless, and I have been collecting proof since the moment she started targeting me. I just need her to keep talking. Behind her, a gate technician with a tool bag is walking up the sidewalk, slowing down when he hears her yelling. Heather does not notice him yet. She is too busy waving the invoice like it is a court summons. "This is your final warning," she says, and her voice gets louder. "If you do not pay by Friday, the tow company has authorization to remove the vehicle, and you will owe storage fees on top of the fine." I glance at the technician, who is stopped completely now, tool bag in hand, just watching. I look back at Heather. "Show me the authorization," I say. "Show me the board vote that approved a tow for a personal vehicle parked in a private driveway." She blinks, and for half a second the smile flickers. "We do not need a board vote for compliance enforcement," she says. "That is in the covenants." I shake my head. "Actually, Heather, selective towing requires a board resolution under Minnesota statute, and you know that, because you were on the board 3 years ago when the same thing happened to Dan Krieger, and he never got a vote either." Her face goes red. "That case is closed," she snaps. "This is not about Dan. This is about you violating parking standards right now." I hold up my phone again. "Then, show me the standard," I say. "Show me the rule that says I cannot park my own truck in my own driveway." She snatches the invoice off the hood and stuffs it into her blue windbreaker pocket. "You will get the documentation when you request it through the proper channels," she says, and she turns to walk away. The gate technician is still standing there, and he catches my eye. He shakes his head slightly, like he has seen this before. I call after her. "Heather, I already submitted a records request 2 weeks ago and you ignored it." She stops, turns around, and her smile is back, colder this time. Portal malfunction, she says. Submit it again. And make sure you use the new format, because the old one is not valid anymore. I watch her walk back toward the clubhouse, rain dripping off her black visor, and I feel the anger settle into something sharper. She just moved the goalposts. I complied. I sent the request, and now she is demanding a new format that does not exist. That is escalation step 1. The portal upload failure that starts the exact moment I push back. And I know what comes next, because I have been studying the Dan Krieger case for weeks. He got the same runaround, the same shifting requirements, and by the time he figured out the game, the HOA had already filed a lien and his property value tanked. I am not going to let that happen to me. I have been paying off debt for 18 months, and one bogus collection notice could ruin months of progress. I need to act fast, because my phone storage is almost full and I must back up video evidence before it gets lost, and I also need to talk to my ally before Heather poisons the well any further. The ally is Roger Chen, a neighbor who sits on the Architectural Review Committee and knows the backstory on Dan Krieger because he was the one who tried to help him. I text Roger from the parking lot. She just threatened to tow. Need to talk. He responds in under a minute. Meet me at the hardware store in 20. I drive over still soaking wet, and when I pull into the lot I see Roger standing near the entrance with a pair of work gloves in his hands, the same kind Heather carries around like a prop. He waves me over. She hit you with the commercial vehicle scam, he says, and it is not a question. I nod. Same complaint template as Dan, I say. Same fake urgency, same records denial. Roger grimaces. She is getting bold, he says. Dan gave up because he could not prove the minutes were altered, but I think I can help you there. He pulls out his phone and scrolls to a screenshot. I saved this 3 years ago, he says. It is the original meeting agenda from the month Dan got fined. Notice anything missing? I lean in and look at the screen. The agenda lists standard business, landscaping bids, a paint color dispute, but there is no line item for commercial vehicle enforcement. Roger swipes to the next image. Now look at the minutes they posted 2 weeks later, he says. Suddenly there is a whole paragraph about approving a new parking enforcement policy, retroactive to the start of the year, and it is in the exact same font and formatting as the rest of the document, but the metadata shows the file was created 8 days after the meeting date. I feel my pulse kick up. They backdated it, I say. Roger nods. And they used the fake policy to justify Dan's tow, and when he challenged it, Heather claimed he missed the notice window. He had no proof the minutes were altered because the original agenda was not on the portal anymore. I have it because I downloaded it the day of the meeting for my own committee records. I look up from the phone. Can I use this? Roger hesitates. You can try, but you need more than one screenshot. Heather will say I edited it, or she will claim the agenda was preliminary and the minutes reflect what actually happened. You need the email headers, the original board packet, and ideally a witness who was at that meeting. I think for a second. Who else was on the board 3 years ago? Roger ticks them off on his fingers. Heather, obviously. Tom Garrison, but he moved out last year. Linda Shapiro, but she quit after the Dan situation because she did not want to be part of it. And Greg Wallace, who is still on the board but does whatever Heather tells him to do. I make a mental note to track down Linda. If she quit over this, she might talk. Before I can say anything else, a car pulls into the lot and parks 2 spaces away. I recognize the driver. It is Heather. She gets out, sees us standing there, and her expression shifts from surprise to something mean. She walks straight toward us, and I can see she has her phone out too, recording. Well, she says. Coordinating your little complaint campaign in public? That is a new low. Roger does not flinch. We are having a conversation, Heather. You do not own the hardware store parking lot. She ignores him and focuses on me. I just got off the phone with the tow company, she says. They are coming Friday morning at 8, so you better have that payment cleared by then. I feel people starting to watch from the store entrance. A couple with a cart full of paint cans, an older guy loading lumber, all of them slowing down to see what the noise is about. I keep my voice level. Heather, you have not provided any documentation, you have not shown me a board vote, and you are demanding payment for a violation that does not exist. She steps closer, and I can smell the faint chemical smell of the laminated policy sheet she keeps in her windbreaker pocket. I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry, she says, and her voice is loud enough now that the couple with the paint cans stops completely. Roger steps between us. Heather, you are making a scene. She whips around to face him. Stay out of this, Roger, or I will bring your fence height variance to the next meeting, and we will see how you like compliance enforcement. The older guy loading lumber shakes his head and mutters something I cannot hear, but the look on his face says it all. Heather does not care. She turns back to me. Friday, 8 a.m., she says, and if you so much as move that truck before then, I will add obstruction of enforcement to your file. She walks back to her car, gets in, and drives off. The couple with the paint cans looks at me, and the woman says, "Is she always like that?" I nod. Pretty much. Roger waits until Heather is out of the lot, then he leans in close. You need to move fast, he says. She is escalating because she knows you are onto her. Get the minutes, get the emails, and get Linda on record before Heather spins this into something worse. I thank him and head home, my mind already running through the next steps. I need to back up the video I just took. I need to file a formal records request with the management company that oversees Cypress Point, and I need to dig into the Dan Krieger case files that Roger hinted are still floating around in the community archives. When I get home, I plug my phone into my laptop and start transferring files. The storage warning pops up again, 89% full, and I realize how close I came to losing today's footage. I label everything by date and location. Then I draft a new records request email to the management company, Northland Community Services. I ask for the original board meeting minutes from 3 years ago, the current parking enforcement policy, any correspondence related to my recent violation notice, and the authorization vote for the tow. I use the exact format Heather mentioned, even though I know she made it up, just so she cannot claim I did it wrong again. I hit send and I get an auto reply. Your request has been received and will be processed within 10 business days per association bylaws. 10 business days is too long. The tow is scheduled for Friday, which is 4 days from now. I need a faster route. I pull up the Cypress Point resident portal and try to log in, but the page throws an error. Service temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. I refresh 3 times, same error. I screenshot it, because this is exactly the kind of convenient technical failure that Heather loves to weaponize. I text Roger again. Portal is down. Convenient timing. He replies immediately. She controls portal access through the compliance committee. She probably locked you out. I feel my jaw clench again. That is escalation step 2, a surprise hearing, where they try to prevent me from speaking at all, and if I cannot access the portal, I cannot submit evidence, I cannot check the meeting calendar, and I cannot see if they have scheduled a hearing without notifying me. I decide to go analog. I drive to the Northland Community Services office, which is in a strip mall off Miller Trunk Highway, and I walk in with a printed copy of my records request. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, takes the paper and stamps it with a date stamp that looks older than I am. "This will take 10 business days," she says. "I know," I say, "but I also need to speak to a supervisor about an urgent compliance issue." She looks at me over her reading glasses. "Urgent how?" I explain the tow threat, the missing documentation, the portal lockout. She listens, then she picks up the phone and dials an extension. After a moment, she says, "Gina, I have a homeowner here from Cypress Point who says he is being towed without proper authorization. Can you come out?" She hangs up and nods toward the waiting area. "Gina will be out in a minute." Gina turns out to be Gina Moss, the regional manager for Northland. She is younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, and she has the look of someone who has dealt with HOA drama before. She invites me into a small conference room and closes the door. "Tell me what is going on," she says. I walk her through the whole thing, the original Dan Krieger case, the altered minutes, the current tow threat, the moving goalposts, the portal lockout. I show her the video from the parking lot, the screenshot of the portal error, and Roger's saved agenda file. She takes notes, and when I finish, she leans back in her chair. "Heather Sanchez is listed as the Compliance Committee Chair," she says. "She has access to certain portal functions, but she should not be locking residents out unilaterally. That is a management company decision. I also do not see any board resolution authorizing a tow in your file. Let me pull the meeting minutes." She types for a minute, then frowns. The minutes from 3 years ago show a parking policy update, but the timestamp on the file does not match the meeting date. She swivels the monitor so I can see. The file was created 9 days after the meeting, which means either someone forgot to upload it or someone added it later. I lean in. "Can you check the email headers on the original distribution?" She nods and clicks through a few more screens. "The emails went out on the night of the meeting," she says, "and the attachment is a different file. The original minutes did not include the parking section. Someone revised them and re-uploaded them without flagging the change. That is a bylaw violation." I feel the pieces clicking into place. "So Heather altered the minutes to justify a fake policy," she says, "and she used that policy to find Dan Krieger, and now she is trying to do the same thing to me." Gina nods slowly. "I need to escalate this to the board president and possibly legal, but in the meantime I am going to put a hold on that tow authorization." She picks up her phone and dials. After a brief conversation, she hangs up and looks at me. "The tow is canceled pending review. You should receive an email confirmation within the hour." I feel a wave of relief, but I know this is not over. Heather is going to lose her mind when she finds out, and she is going to come after me even harder. I ask Gina if I can get a copy of the email headers and the original meeting packet. She prints them out and hands them to me in a manila folder. "Use these carefully," she says. "If this goes to a hearing, you will need them, but do not share them publicly until we have completed our internal review." I thank her and leave. Folder tucked under my arm. By the time I get home, the confirmation email is already in my inbox. Tow authorization rescinded pending board review. Contact Northland Community Services with questions. I forward it to Roger, and he responds with a thumbs-up emoji in one sentence. Heather is going to explode. He is right. 20 minutes later, my phone rings, unknown number. I answer anyway. It is Heather, and she is already yelling before I can say hello. You went over my head to Northland? She shouts. You do not get to bypass the compliance process just because you do not like the outcome. I keep my voice calm. I requested records and you locked me out of the portal, Heather. I had no choice but to go to the management company. She makes a noise like a frustrated growl. The portal is down for maintenance, she says. That has nothing to do with you. And the tow is still happening, whether Northland likes it or not, because the board gave me discretionary enforcement authority, and I am exercising it. I let her rant for a few more seconds, then I cut in. Heather, Gina Moss canceled the tow. If you override her, you are acting outside your authority and the association could be liable. There is a long pause, and when she speaks again, her voice is quieter but sharper. You just made a very big mistake, she says. I was willing to work with you, but now you are on my list. Enjoy your next violation notice, because I am going to find every single thing wrong with your property, and you are going to wish you had just paid the fine. She hangs up. I sit there for a moment, phone in hand, and I realize she just threatened me on a recorded call. I did not tell her I was recording, but Minnesota is a one-party consent state, which means I do not have to. I save the call audio and add it to my evidence folder. If you want to see how this whole mess ends, hit the like button and subscribe, because it gets even crazier from here. The next morning, I wake up to an email from Heather. Subject line: Notice of Compliance Hearing. The body of the email says I am required to appear before the Compliance Committee on Thursday evening to address multiple alleged violations, including unauthorized commercial vehicle parking, failure to maintain exterior paint standards, and obstruction of association enforcement activities. The hearing is scheduled for 6 p.m. at the clubhouse, and failure to appear will result in automatic fines and a lien filing. I read it twice, then I forwarded it to Gina Moss with a note. This is retaliation. I just got the tow canceled yesterday, and now she is inventing new violations. Gina responds within the hour. I see that. We are reviewing the complaint file now. In the meantime, I recommend you attend the hearing and bring all your documentation. We will have a representative there as well. I spend the rest of the day preparing. I print out the email headers, the altered minutes comparison, the video transcripts, the call recording, and Roger's saved agenda file. I also track down Linda Shapiro, the former board member who quit after the Dan Krieger mess. She agrees to meet me at a coffee shop near the freeway. When I walk in, she is already sitting at a corner table with a stack of old file folders in front of her. I kept these, she says, before I even sit down. I knew someday someone would need them. She slides the top folder across the table. Inside is a printed email chain from 3 years ago, and the subject line is Dan Krieger Parking Complaint Resolution. The chain shows Heather arguing with the rest of the board about whether they had the authority to fine Dan without a formal policy, and Linda repeatedly asking for a vote. The last email in the chain is from Heather, and it says, I am moving forward with enforcement regardless. If anyone has an issue, they can bring it up at the next meeting. Linda taps the page. There was no next meeting discussion, she says. She just did it, and when Dan tried to fight back, she altered the minutes to make it look like the board had approved a policy retroactively. I called her out in a private email, and she told me if I went public, she would make sure I never got another variance approved for as long as I lived in Cypress Point. I quit the next week. I look at the email chain, then at Linda. Can I use this? She nods. I do not live there anymore, so she has no leverage over me. But be careful. Heather has friends on the board, and if you go into that hearing alone, they are going to steamroll you. I thank her and take the folder. I now have 3 smoking guns. The altered minutes, the email headers, and Linda's evidence of Heather acting unilaterally. I just need to figure out how to deploy them without getting shut down before I can speak. Thursday evening comes fast. I arrive at the clubhouse at 5:45, folder in hand, and I see Roger waiting near the door. He nods toward the meeting room. Heather is already in there, and she brought Greg Wallace and 2 other committee members I do not recognize. Gina Moss is here too, sitting in the back with a notepad. I walk in and take a seat in the front row. Heather is at the head table, and she has a rolling file cart next to her with folders stacked 3 rows deep. She does not look at me. At exactly 6 p.m., she bangs a gavel on the table. This hearing is now in session, she says. We are here to address multiple compliance violations by the homeowner at 428 Birchwood Lane. She opens the top folder on the cart and pulls out a printed photo. Unauthorized commercial vehicle, she says, and she holds up a picture of my truck in my driveway. The photo is date-stamped 2 weeks ago, which is before I even got the first notice. I raise my hand. Heather, that is a personal vehicle. I already provided registration proving it is not commercial. She ignores me and pulls out another photo. Exterior paint failure, she says. The trim on your front porch is visibly peeling in this image. I lean forward to look at the photo. It is not my house. The house number is wrong, the porch design is wrong, and the trim color does not even match. I stand up. That is not my property, I say. Heather slaps the gavel again. You will speak when recognized, she snaps. Sit down or you will be removed from the hearing. Gina Moss stands up in the back. Heather, if that photo is not accurate, we need to address that before continuing. Heather whips around to face her. This is a compliance committee hearing, not a management company meeting. You are here as an observer, not a participant. Gina does not sit down. Actually, Heather, Northland has the authority to intervene if we believe the hearing process is being conducted improperly, and showing evidence that does not match the property in question qualifies. Heather's face goes red, and I can see Greg Wallace shifting uncomfortably in his seat. One of the other committee members, a woman in her 50s, leans over and whispers something to Greg. Heather ignores all of them and pulls out the next folder. Obstruction of enforcement, she says. The homeowner contacted Northland Community Services in an attempt to bypass the committee and undermine association authority. That alone is grounds for a $500 fine and a formal reprimand. I feel my patience snap. I contacted Northland because you locked me out of the portal and refused to provide documentation, I say. That is my right under the bylaws. Heather slams the folder shut. You do not get to decide what your rights are, she shouts. I decide what gets enforced, and if you keep interrupting, I will have you removed and we will proceed without you. Roger stands up from his seat in the second row. Heather, you cannot bar a homeowner from their own hearing. That is a due process violation. Heather points at him. You are out of order. This is not your hearing. The room is getting loud now, multiple people talking over each other, and I can see Gina Moss typing notes furiously. I decide to deploy the first piece of evidence. I pull out the email headers from my folder and hold them up. Heather, before you fine me for anything, I think the committee should see this. I walk up to the table and set the printout in front of her. These are the email headers from the board meeting 3 years ago, the one where you claim the parking policy was approved. The headers show the original minutes did not include any parking policy section. That section was added 9 days later after the meeting, and the file metadata confirms it. The room goes silent. Heather looks down at the printout, and I can see her jaw working. "Where did you get this?" she asks, and her voice is tight. "I got it from Northland," I say. "They pulled it during their review of the tow authorization." Gina Moss stands up again. "That is correct," she says. "We found discrepancies in the meeting records, and we are currently conducting a full audit of compliance actions taken under the altered policy." Heather picks up the printout and tears it in half. "This is falsified," she says. "You are trying to sabotage this committee with fake documents." I stay calm. "The documents came from your own management company, Heather. If you think they are fake, you can take it up with Gina. But you cannot fine me based on a policy that was never legally approved." Greg Wallace clears his throat. "Heather, maybe we should table this and review the minutes ourselves before we move forward." Heather turns on him. "Are you questioning my authority?" Greg shrinks back. "No, I just think we should be careful." Heather stands up, grabs the rolling file cart, and shoves it toward the wall. "Fine," she says. "Hearing adjourned. We will reconvene when I have had time to address these baseless accusations." She storms out of the room, and the other committee members look at each other in confusion. Gina Moss walks up to me. "You did well," she says quietly. "Keep all of that documentation safe. This is going to get worse before it gets better." She is right. Over the next 2 days, I get 4 more violation notices. One for a trash can left at the curb past pickup time, even though the photo is date stamped on a day when there was no pickup. One for an unapproved porch light fixture, even though the fixture has been there since I moved in and was installed by the previous owner. One for excessive lawn height, even though I mowed 3 days ago and the grass is barely 2 inches. And one for unauthorized vehicle repair, because I changed my own oil in the driveway, and Heather claims that counts as commercial activity. Each notice has a fine attached. $50, $75, $100. The total is over $400, and every notice says I have 72 hours to pay, or the fines double and a lien filing begins. I document everything. I take photos of my trash can, my porch light, my lawn, my driveway. I timestamp them and save them to 3 separate cloud accounts because I do not trust my phone storage anymore. I also text Roger and ask him if he has heard anything from the board. He responds immediately. "Linda called me. Heather is telling people you are a liar and you are trying to destroy the HOA with fake evidence. A couple of neighbors believe her. You need to get ahead of this before the next board meeting." I ask when the meeting is. He sends back a screenshot of the community calendar. "Next Tuesday, 7 p.m. open session." I mark it on my own calendar and start planning my counterattack. Monday afternoon, I get a call from Gina Moss. "We finished the audit," she says. The board meeting minutes from 3 years ago were definitely altered, and we found 2 other cases where Heather added policy language after the fact to justify fines. We are recommending the board void all fines tied to those policies and issue refunds to affected homeowners. We are also recommending Heather be removed from the compliance committee pending a governance review. I feel a surge of relief. That is exactly what I need. Can you present that at the meeting tomorrow? Gina hesitates. I can present the findings, but the board has to vote on the recommendations. If Greg Wallace and the others side with Heather, this could drag out. I thank her and hang up. Then I text Linda. I need you at the meeting tomorrow. If Heather tries to spin this, I need someone who was there 3 years ago to back me up. Linda agrees, and Tuesday evening I walk into the clubhouse meeting room with my folder, my phone, and a printed copy of Gina's audit summary. The room is already packed. I see Roger in the third row, Linda near the back, and Heather at the board table with Greg Wallace and 2 other board members. Gina Moss is sitting off to the side with a laptop open. The board president, a man named Carl Dietrich, who I have only seen twice before, bangs the gavel and calls the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, he says. Management company report. Gina stands up and walks to the front. She connects her laptop to the projector and pulls up a slide titled Compliance Audit Findings. Over the next 10 minutes, she walks through the altered minutes, the fake policies, and the pattern of enforcement actions that were never properly authorized. She shows the email headers, the metadata, and the timeline of fines issued to Dan Krieger and 2 other homeowners who are no longer in the community. When she finishes, the room is completely silent. Carl Dietrich looks at Heather. Do you have a response? Heather stands up, and I can see her hands shaking. This is a coordinated attack, she says. The homeowner at 428 Birchwood Lane has been working with former board members and outside parties to fabricate evidence and undermine this association. Everything I have done has been in the best interest of the community, and I will not sit here and be accused of fraud by a management company that has failed to support our enforcement efforts. Gina cuts in. Heather, the evidence is not fabricated. The metadata is verifiable, and the email headers are from the association's own server. If you believe there is an error, you are welcome to provide documentation to the contrary. Heather does not provide documentation. Instead, she pulls out a pair of work gloves from under the table and slaps them down in front of Gina. You want proof? She shouts. I have been doing the work nobody else wants to do for 3 years, and all I get is complaints and accusations. If this board does not have the spine to back me up, then I am done. She grabs her blue windbreaker off the back of her chair and starts toward the door. Carl bangs the gavel. Heather, sit down. We are not finished. She stops, turns around, and points at me. You want to know who is behind this? It is him. He has been recording private conversations, harassing board members, and filing frivolous complaints to stall enforcement. If anyone should be fined, it is him. I stand up and pull out my phone. I hold it up so everyone can see. Heather, I have been recording because you threatened me on multiple occasions, and Minnesota is a one-party consent state. I also have a timeline packet that shows every interaction we have had, every notice you sent, and every piece of evidence you claimed did not exist. I walk to the front and hand the packet to Carl. It is a 3-ring binder, 20 pages, tabs for each violation, and a summary page that cross-references Gina's audit. Carl flips through it slowly, and I can see his expression change from skeptical to concerned. Heather watches from the doorway, her face pale now. Carl looks up. This is very thorough, he says. He turns to Gina. What is your recommendation? Gina does not hesitate. We recommend the board refund all fines and fees tied to the altered policies, void the lien filings, and remove Heather Sanchez from the Compliance Committee immediately. We also recommend the board adopt a formal records management policy to prevent this from happening again. Carl nods. I am going to call for a vote. All in favor of accepting the management company's recommendations? Greg Wallace raises his hand immediately. The other two board members look at Heather, then at each other. Then they raise their hands too. Carl bangs the gavel. Motion passes. Heather, you are removed from the Compliance Committee effective immediately. Heather's smug smile vanishes when the room turns on her. She looks around, and I can see the moment she realizes she has no allies left. She grabs her gloves off the table, shoves them into her pocket, and walks out without another word. The door slams behind her, and the room erupts in murmurs. Roger catches my eye and grins. Linda gives me a thumbs up from the back row. Carl clears his throat. Next item, he says. Refund process for affected homeowners. We will work with Northland to identify all fines tied to the voided policies and issue checks within 30 days. If you believe you were impacted, please submit your documentation to the management office. The meeting continues for another 20 minutes, but I barely hear any of it. I am too busy processing the fact that I just won. The HOA refunds the fines and fees tied to the scheme. Heather loses her committee role immediately, and a verified timeline packet circulated to homeowners collapses her narrative. I leave the clubhouse with my binder under my arm, and Roger walks out with me. You did it, he says. You actually did it. I shake my head. We did it. If you had not saved that agenda file, I would not have had enough to prove she altered the minutes. He claps me on the shoulder. What are you going to do now? I think for a second. I am going to go home, back up all my files one more time, and sleep for about 12 hours. I do exactly that. The next morning, I wake up to an email from Gina Moss. The refund checks are being processed, and your total refund is $625. Covering the voided fines and the tow authorization fee you were never supposed to pay in the first place. I also want to let you know that Heather submitted her resignation from the board this morning, effective immediately. The board accepted it without discussion. I read the email twice, then I forwarded it to Linda and Roger with a note. It is over. Roger responds with a gif of someone doing a victory dance. Linda sends back a single sentence. I knew someone would take her down eventually. I am glad it was you. Over the next few weeks, I hear through the neighborhood grapevine that Heather has stopped coming to community events and is keeping a very low profile. A couple of neighbors who believed her story at first apologize to me when they see the refund checks and realize what actually happened. The new Compliance Committee chair is a retired schoolteacher named Margaret, who sends out a welcome email promising transparency and fair enforcement. The rolling file cart Heather used to haul around disappears from the clubhouse, and someone jokes that it probably contained half the missing records from the last 3 years. I also get a call from Dan Krieger. Linda gave him my number, and he wants to thank me for reopening the case. I lost my house because of Heather's scam, he says. I could not prove the minutes were fake, and by the time I figured it out, the lien had already tanked my equity and I had to sell. I am not in a position to sue the HOA, but I want you to know that what you did mattered. It mattered to me, and it probably mattered to other people who got run out of that neighborhood and never had the resources to fight back. I tell him I am sorry it happened to him, and he says, do not be sorry. Just keep holding people like her accountable. I promise him I will. A month later, I am sitting in my driveway, changing the oil in my truck again, and I see Margaret walking up the sidewalk with a clipboard. I tense up for a second. Then I remember she is not Heather. She waves. Just doing a routine walkthrough, she says. Everything looks good. I wanted to let you know we are updating the parking policy to clarify that personal vehicles are allowed in driveways regardless of size, and we are also adding a formal appeals process so homeowners have a clear path to challenge violations. I thank her, and she nods. We are also working on a records retention policy, so this kind of thing cannot happen again. Gina Moss has been a huge help with that. She walks off, and I finish the oil change in peace. That night, I sit down and write up the whole story, start to finish, because I know other people are dealing with the same kind of HOA nightmare, and they need to know it is possible to win. I post it in a couple of online forums, and within a week it has thousands of views and dozens of comments from people sharing their own stories. One commenter says, "I am dealing with the exact same thing right now. Your timeline packet idea is genius. I am going to use that." Another says, "I cannot believe she actually tore up the evidence in the middle of a hearing. That is next level unhinged." A third says, "This is why I will never buy in an HOA. The whole system is broken." I do not disagree, but I also know that Cypress Point is different now. The new board is functional, the management company is paying attention, and Heather is gone. It is not perfect, but it is better, and that is because people like Roger and Linda and Gina were willing to stand up when it mattered. I am just glad I was able to finish what Dan Krieger started 3 years ago. He deserved better, and so did everyone else Heather targeted. Now they have their refunds, their records are fixed, and the person who caused all the damage is facing the consequences she should have faced a long time ago. I think about the moment in the hardware store parking lot when Heather tried to intimidate me in front of strangers, and how the gate technician with the tool bag just stood there, watching, shaking his head. I think about the moment in the hearing when she ripped up the email headers and tried to pretend they were fake, and how the whole room saw through it. I think about the moment when Carl called the vote and her smile disappeared, and how satisfying it was to see 3 years of lies collapse in under 60 seconds. Those moments are why I kept going, even when it felt like the system was rigged against me. Because the system is only rigged if people like Heather are allowed to operate without oversight, and the second you shine a light on what they are doing, the whole scam falls apart. I close my laptop and look out the window. My truck is parked in the driveway, same spot it has been for weeks, and there is no tow truck, no violation notice, no Heather Sanchez standing in the rain with a fake invoice and a condescending smile. Just my truck, my driveway, and my property, exactly the way it should be. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.